Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ramak Salamat, and I'm the VP of Staffbase for the Asia Pacific and Japan region. And I'm joining you today from the beautiful Sydney, Australia. Before we begin, I'd love to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. We have an incredible 400 people that had joined us last week in our session across Asia, which was amazing. And we had a bit of technical difficulties, so I wanted to make sure that this recording got to everyone. And I'd love for you all beyond this session to let us know where you're from, send us a note and say hi. And thank you so much again for everyone that did join. And thank you for your patience. I wanted to make sure that we got the recording because there is such a lot of goodness out. And we wanted you to be part of this community that we're building and to create this space for internal communications professionals like yourself to be able to share and learn from each other and to do all the fun things that a community has. So let's talk about the elephant in the room today. We named this the unspoken truths because this year at Staffbase, you'll see a lot of elephants flying around. And we know that the reason for that is that we know that, internal communications sometimes feels like it's a curated script. And we want to kind of break away from that. We want to break away from the polished and the predictable. And we want to get raw because we know that the struggles run deep. We know that leaders are really struggling to connect with people. We know AI is shifting the way that we work. And we know that it's going to be harder and harder to connect with frontline workers and to make sure that everyone is reached with communications, particularly in the way that the regions are set up today. So the idea is that we want to really be able to walk the path that's untraveled and to explore topics that are hard to talk about, that no one really wants to talk about, actually. But before we do that, we can't just ignore them anymore, right? We have to address it. So that's what today's about. That's why a lot of our series in 2025 will be that, and we'll have thought leaders in this space to really unpack some of the ambiguity and uncertainty around leadership messaging, the role of AI, and really the struggle to reach frontline communicators and much, much, much more. I have our incredible founder joining us today, Frank Wolf. And after that session, we'll have a live panel, which was live with an amazing host lineup. And we'll continue that conversation before, after, and hopefully beyond today. A little bit about Staffbase for those that might not know who we are. We are the largest internal communications platform, which is a multi-channel platform in this space. And we help communicators and companies around the world to be able to engage with their frontline employees or their desk workers wherever they are through mobile apps, through intranet, through email, through chat, SMS, digital signage, the works. The idea is that we want to be able to help you facilitate your connection to your employees no matter what type of channel they like to consume information, and to be able to have analytics and measurement in that one place for you. We have the opportunity of working with over 2,500 employers like yourself across the world and across Asia Pacific, and we're able to help them drive their business and help them transform how they worked. We have been recognized as a Gartner leader in the Intranet Packaged Solutions for 2 years in a row now, and we're very excited to be able to launch and to grow our operations here in Asia Pacific. So I hope at some point we can connect to share what we can do and potentially show you the art of the possible. But today is not about product. I wanted to introduce you to one of our keynotes, Frank Wolf. And I can't think of a better person to kick things off with than Frank, who's our Chief of Strategy, but also one of the founders here at Staffbase. Frank's been shaping the way internal communications has been a driving force for organizations for over 2 decades now. And he has been working with some of the world's largest and leading brands across the world in helping them transform the way that they communicate with their employees around the world. Frank's also written a book in 2024 called The Narrative Age, which we're going to send out to a few of you that have asked some really good questions. And also, he's actually been recognized as a TEDx speaker for 2025. So hopefully you'll see him once they publish that talk very soon. He is an incredible, incredible man. He's shown the world the power of storytelling in modern workplaces. And today, Frank's going to definitely not sugarcoat anything. He's here to challenge the status quo and to push us to rethink communications. So I hope you enjoy this session. Without further ado, here's Frank.
Hello, everyone. I know the new year is a couple of weeks in, but it's worth to look at what could be some interesting insights that might help you in your role in 2025. And I brought a couple of, as we call it, unspoken truths for this new year, and also how we would call it. It's not just unspoken truths, but it's also kind of elephants in the room, things we might not talk too much about, but might be quite important for the way you look at your role or your work in your role as a communicator in the year. And I have like 3 specific ones that I want to share and kind of go down a bit in 3 kind of rabbit holes there, and give you hopefully a bit of a fresh perspective on these topics. And I want to get started right away with the first one and with an example that we had also at the beginning of the year. It came out, Meta would say they changed the way they do fact checking on their platform. Mark Zuckerberg posted this video to explain what's going on, and kind of saying, hey, we are stopping fact checking. We will switch this more to an automated system, kind of community notes system that was invented and piloted for a couple of years now at Twitter, now X. And there was a ton of discussion, obviously, going on about like, what is this move all about? Is this like political appeasement to the new government, or where is this coming from? And it was really interesting to see how all the discussion started. And no surprise, the framing of quite a lot of commentators was about like Meta is doing a bad thing here, and there will be a lot of misinformation going on, and this is like a super bad and move that nobody really can understand. On the other hand, if you started to dig a bit deeper there, it's quite interesting that there were also other sort of views on that, and specifically also around community notes. What I didn't know, and what's quite interesting, the whole idea of community notes is that everyone can kind of fact check information that's on social media, and you can sort of write a note, and other users can kind of reinforce it and kind of say, yes, I support this note, and so on. So you have kind of more of a community approach to fact checking. And what scientists find out, because they had now a couple of years to actually research all this and see if this works or not, and they found that these community notes are pretty powerful in terms of how they help users to trust information. So because they give also context about why things are different, and it turned out users trust them more than professional fact checkers. So actually, that's an interesting tech innovation that Meta put in place here. And there's also some other comments going on, because a lot of people said, well, a lot of the fact checking in the past was super hard, because it's in many cases, it's not just about facts. How do you fact check, for instance, an opinion? And so there was a kind of a gray area between what fact checking is actually about and not. And I think that was a super good example of to say, there's a news coming out, and in our highly polarized world, we have the initial reaction and intention to say, I'm against it, or I'm for it. And it's very hard and rare to actually, for these issues, take the time, look into details, and kind of come to a more nuanced conclusion and on what's going on and what's here. And for me, that's the first elephant in the room. There is a concept that I came across last year and that I really love, and I think a concept that we need much more in our society, specifically as leaders and communicators, and it's called ambiguity tolerance. It's the idea that in our complex world, there will be a lot of conflicting information. And we as humans, that's a stressful state for us. Like, you may have heard of the concept of confirmation bias. Once I believe something, once I have a certain narrative in my mind, I keep seeking out information that confirm this narrative because we love to be right. And it's a trait of specifically highly intelligent or intelligent people to be able to keep two kind of thoughts in their mind, which are kind of conflicting with each other, which are kind of don't really fit together. If you are able to do this, it's great, because a lot of it in our world is actually conflicting with each other. You may have people that you don't like that say stupid things right now, but on the other hand, these people might at some occasions say good things or make very smart decisions. To keep all this in our minds together, that's really hard. However, research has found that a high level of ambiguity tolerance can restore solidarity and mutual empathy, specifically in highly polarized discussion. So I think interesting concept, specifically if you're a communicator, to kind of know the concept and know how to do this makes a ton of sense. And I want to give you a couple of ideas and sort of practical, what can you do? First, here's a super easy self-test on like, what's your ambiguity tolerance? And it's obviously the case that some of us are more liking to work in clear, predictable environments. But I think right now, specifically also in communications, you are much more working in an uncertain and complex world. So the whole idea, do you feel uncomfortable when you have unclear or conflicting instructions? Do you avoid situations where outcomes are unpredictable? Are you stressed if no clear guidance is given? Like, what about new tasks and new things? And can you work with people who actually believe different things than you? And I think all of this is super important if we are in a role like communications, to kind of bring groups together and kind of align them on a common vision or a common purpose. So ambiguity tolerance is a kind of quite interesting concept to follow, and to also give you really concrete ideas on how you could do this in your day-to-day work. First, there is a lot of ambiguity in the things we do and the information we see everywhere. If you acknowledge this, it's the first step to actually really make this work and kind of work with this in a very highly proactive way. So saying, we don't have, maybe in a kind of crisis and kind of change situations, to admitting, yes, we are living in uncertain times. We don't have all the answers yet, but here's what we know so far. And I think that's highly valued and highly appreciated by an audience. The second one is you can frame uncertainty as an opportunity for collaboration. So invite an audience to say, hey, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's what we need to figure out. If you have a contribution to that situation, if you want to join in and help us on that, you're invited to do so. So that's a second idea, how to deal with uncertainty in this regard. And the third idea is to, even if there are uncertain situations, to kind of give guardrails or guidelines to say, hey, we don't know what's going on yet, or there's a couple of things we need to figure out, but here are a couple of core priorities or values that we will follow and we will use throughout the whole process. Just 3 ideas, and I hope this gives you and kind of some inspiration on to thrive, not just survive, but thrive in uncertain situations. I personally, for myself, has seen them as very powerful in change situations. If you go out very proactively and admit what you don't know, it's a super powerful tool to bring people on your side. So that's number one. That's my first elephant. And let's go to the second elephant. And the second elephant is, and I can't do free elephants in 2025 without talking about AI, is about AI, but in a slightly different way than we discussed so far. Here's the thing. A lot of discussions that we have about AI are, will AI replace us? Will we still all have a job in a couple of years? Is there general artificial intelligence that kind of will wipe off humans from the face of Earth and so on? So we have a lot of discussions in terms of focus on AI, how powerful this is going to get, right? However, there's one point that I started to realize and see for myself, because I'm using AI a lot in the things I do. And it's also a point that came up when I've seen this post from Paul Graham. He's the one of the founders of the very famous Y Combinator accelerator for startups from Silicon Valley. And he's pretty much saying something about AI. Like we think we know where this is going, like where the dangers. Something about AI will be very obvious in the future, and we don't see it right now. And this could be obviously a lot of things. And if you would ask me, one of these things is that AI kind of will make us think less and will kind of reduce our critical thinking. I see this with myself. When I have like, I'm researching and I find a study, like let's say 50 pages, I'm not reading the study anymore. Like I take the study, I put it up to ChatGPT and I say, give me a summary, and specifically here are the points I'm interested about. So I start to get lazy about certain things that I did before, and my ability to kind of say, I read a 60-page document, I quickly find out what's important there, sort of goes in the background because ChatGPT does this in such a great way. So I keep handing things like this over to ChatGPT. And we've seen this in our team. Whenever it's about decisions like, also easy decisions like what's a good webinar title, what are ideas for things we could write and so on. We continue more and more to use AI for that. And with that, we continue to start to lose our own thinking and opinions about it. And the interesting thing is there is some research coming out for this, which kind of proves that AI usage does something that researchers call cognitive offloading. And this cognitive offloading pretty much means we also practice less critical thinking. And there are also like some really severe warnings now. It's one thing that this might happen to a 30 or 40-year-old seasoned professional who's kind of starting to using AI. But AI is also something that a new generation, our kids, use all the time. And there's a very good chance that they will never even able to create and to develop certain critical thinking skills, because it's so much more easy with AI to do that, right? So the message here is, I don't have a solution for this. If you ask me what's one of the biggest risks for AI right now, I would say this. The main message is specifically also for yourself and in your teams, make sure you kind of force yourself and the teams into thinking yourself, critical thinking. A super easy example to illustrate this, if you say, hey, I want to create a title or a subject, I want to write an email and I need a really good subject line, and I give this task to somebody. If they do this with AI, they would typically come back with 3 or 4 subject lines and say, hey, we could use these subject lines. And we have to force ourselves to say, give me, based on that, what's the subject line you would actually pick and why, right? So really force ourselves to make decisions, have our own opinions, and be be ready and be prepared to kind of defend why we think something and why we want to take a decision. AI can make suggestions, but it's like let's have this last step of critical thinking really inside of a team or inside of humans, just as an idea. And obviously, we as a society need to understand how we can build and fix this for our children, or how this will impact our children. If you read what's going on, they all say the whole mobile phone revolution, the whole social media, TikTok, and so on revolution is nothing against what's coming with AI and what's kind of the cognitive offloading that's going to happen that we do. And with that, pretty much AI doesn't have to beat us and getting smarter and smarter. The challenge is that humans might get dumber and dumber in the next years. So we are kind of defeating us ourselves. So that's an elephant in the room. I know it's not a great message here, but I think it's something to watch out and also to see and discuss maybe in your teams how this is going on. My third elephant is something about communications and something about like a super obvious facts in communication that we sometimes tend to forget. And for that, like I ask our consulting team here at Staffbase, and I was saying, what is in your discussions with customers, what's the like super obvious things that we don't see too much, but that's kind of the major distinction between projects that run well and projects that struggle with engagement and with the goals that the team is setting. And they were very clear about this, and they were saying it's actually reach. So it's actually the question, are we establishing something, a platform that really helps the communications team to reach the majority of employees? Or is it like a small fraction of people who actually tune into the platform? And reach is often seen as, specifically if you measure communication, is often seen as, well, it's not a highly sophisticated measurement. Like we could do much more on the impact side and so on. And while all this is true, reach is the very basic for everything else that follows. And I think one good example, and without getting political here, in the U.S. elections, you've seen in the campaign there, the new media, and it was called like the podcast election, because podcasts now have a tremendous reach in the market, and which is way, way, way bigger than that of the whole TV network in the US together. So if you go to one major podcast, the other candidate would have had to go to like over weeks to so many TV shows to actually get the same reach. And that's a very basic insight, in fact, to say, where do I actually get the reach and the powerful channel to do that? And that's, after all, without all the insights into how is the messaging done, what's the communication strategy, and so on. Sitting and having powerful channels who reach employees or an audience that you want to reach is actually one of the most important things to kind of back up the importance of a comms team, and also of a comms team to be able to have a seat at the table and really being heard and really being taken seriously inside a company. The key insights that we have over the past years is that in the communication space, we more and more follow the leads here of the marketing idea to say, good reach comes from a multi-channel approach. And I know I've been around like for 20 years in communication. We had years where we said, hey, I want to reduce communication channels. I want to have less because it's so much out there and it's so hard to manage and so many silos. But what we found and what we've seen over years in marketing, a multi-channel approach pretty much means you have one place where you manage things, and you have multiple channels, and you send out things through the channels that actually meet the needs of an audience. And the same is true for communication now, right? Certain channels like a mobile app are great channels for workers on the go, for frontline workers, blue-collar workers. Others like desktop are great for like kind of a traditional intranet audience who's sitting at desks and who's still working at the office or working at the home office. Emails good specifically for people who are like a lot of the go leaders, sales teams and others. And so there are these channels, and the better we can combine them, and the more relevant they are, the higher the reach for an overall comms team. And that's sort of, I know it's the basis, but it's if you get this right, everything else is so much easier. So you can ask yourself for this year, for 2025, what's actually our reach? Where are we? And are there initiatives? Are there good ideas how we can increase the reach, how we can increase the value that we create with these channels for our audience? And once you have the reach, you can then run communications campaigns. You can just build everything else on top of this. It's an elephant in the room, and I think it's a quite important one for not just for this year, but let's refocus this year. Last point, you might see a couple of elephants. If you follow Staffbase throughout the year, we have a Elephants in the Room campaign. There's going to be a lot of hopefully also funny and insightful stories about the different elephants in the lives of communicators. So far, it's a campaign that's resonating really well, and we have a lot of fun to keep developing it and keep thinking about what are the things in your day-to-day work which are elephants in the room and which we should address or which we should look at. Feel free also there to reach out, share your elephants in the room and how you deal with them, or maybe also topics where you say, hey, that's a topic I'd love you to do a webinar about, or kind of share more information about. So much from my side. I hope these 3 insights help a bit to look outside of the box for this year. And yeah, wishing you a great year. Hope it was great so far, and a great year going on. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Wow, thank you so much, Frank, for those insights into some of those big elephants in the room we're seeing across the world. And we're going to unpack some of that because we're going to take it now back to Asia Pacific and Japan. We're going to take this local. Today, I have 2 incredible panelists that I'm very, very honored to share their insights with you today and to introduce you to. First, we have Mala Ramalingam. Mala is one of my personal favorites in this space, personal favorite thought leader, authentic, genuine person that I've had the opportunity of meeting over the last few years. She's a business communicator and a strategist. And her real, I guess, her focus has always been on helping internal communicators elevate themselves across every organization she's worked in. She started as an English teacher and now, and then moved in across to crisis management, across boardrooms all over ASEAN. She's gone from agency life to managing communications for global organizations with 13,000 plus employees. Very, very complex environments in manufacturing, in power, in oil and gas. And she's just an incredible person and human being. I also have joining us Megan Thomas, who is a personal favorite of mine as well. Megan is a strategic communicator and a change management professional with over 2 decades of experience working with C-suite leaders and helping guide them across financial services, healthcare, government, media. She is so experienced in this space, and she now leads Buzz Communications, which is and is also the immediate past president of the IABC New South Wales membership body. So big shout out to all of our IABC members and our IABC friends that are joining here today. Megan helps organizations navigate and change comm strategies across the region. She is definitely one of the 4 leading bodies, I think, in the AI space, very passionate about AI and driving meaningful outcomes. And I'm just so incredibly honored to have her join us today. So please, without further ado, join me in welcoming Megan and Mala. All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for being on today. I'm so excited to ask you some questions. We've unpacked some of the elephants that Frank sees and that we see globally of being some of the things that people don't necessarily want to talk about when it comes to internal comms for 2025. Are there any big areas in terms of what you're seeing? I know, Mala, you work with clients across the Southeast Asia region, and then Megan here in Australia and New Zealand. Is there any elephants that we haven't talked about today? I'm sure there's many, but any big call outs from your perspective that you'd like to kind of share with us? Maybe Megan, you
Sure.
first.
Yeah. Do you want? I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Happy to kick off. I think when you think about Frank's three themes, and you throw in all the sort of political and economic ambiguity and uncertainty at the moment, they're really difficult issues we're navigating. It's almost like we're communicating in chaos. So I would say for me, the first big elephant is that unfortunately employee communications is still seen as more of a cost center rather than a value creator. And you've got this sort of issue where on the one hand, businesses are feeling really vulnerable and unprepared to manage this volatility, and poor communication is a really serious risk factor. And we know how it can influence business outcomes and manage risk, but our decision makers, on the other hand, they're still seeing us as message senders often, rather than the really core strategic business function that we can play. And that's been underpinned by comments the opposition leader made recently about employee communicators not adding anything to the lives of everyday Australians. Surveys saying that executives don't trust that their comms teams have the ability to navigate this complexity. So this gap between what's required and how we're perceived is probably one of the elephants I'd first call out.
I love that. The value perception of communication, right? The one that we're always we're struggling to show value for beyond sending those emails out that are newsletters and being really valued in terms of what we do. That's spot on. And I agree with you. It's something that we're always grappling with in our conversations as well. Mala, anything beyond that, like in terms of the work that you see or the customers that you've been working with lately? What are some? Is that different in ASEAN?
No, still very much.
Yeah.
So. Actually, in ASEAN, the thing is, it's pretty rare to have an internal comms department.
Yes, true.
Unless you are a multinational, an existing multinational, who's opened up, who's open shop over in this part of the world, then you have something at global level, and then you cascade it to an internal comms division that you have on the ground. Yeah. But in Southeast Asia, by and large, the only ones, non-multinationals, non-MNC, would probably be the large conglomerates, with huge staff force. But even then, internal comms doesn't sit as internal comms as a department. It's usually under, for example, there are three. One is under HR itself, particularly those in manufacturing, because they perceive anything to do with internal communications, with people communications internally is under HR. So it tends to, HR is supposed to handle it. Alternatively, if they're very big on leadership and branding and all of that, the business that is, then that function will probably sit under corporate affairs or corporate communications. So like where I've worked before, I've worked in both, where our comms reports into HR in the manufacturing sector, and I work in corporate communications, and I will have a small, sub-team within my team, like 2 or 3, that would just be called senior executives or comms corporate communications manager - employee engagement, something like that. But they wouldn't be pigeonholed to handle only IC.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So 1 is under HR, 2 is under corporate affairs or corporate comm. And in certain organizations, if it's not too large, it sits under the CEO or MD's office, usually reporting to the chief strategy officer, because they want to control the kind of narrative that goes out and the kind of feedback that comes back. So yeah, so it's that's, so when you
not given the attention, not given the attention.
Correct.
And as that framework, is there any big elephants? Obviously, one of it would be that it isn't given the attention it deserves, being a small piece of a bigger pie of a role. Is there any other
The concern that we generally have when it comes to internal comms is, again, it's not given priority because it's not linked to the business. Until we can show that it is there to support the business, some sort of line where we support a business goal or reduce business costs, perhaps, or address a crisis. Okay, if you can draw direct lines, then only we have value. So that is a challenge for us. The thing is, they're not even brought in. Whoever's handling these things are not even brought into the table. We don't even know those things half the time. We are mostly order takers,
Yes.
So that's the elephant in the room, to get these people on board and give them the tools to do it. That's another elephant in the room.
Yeah.
They expect us to do all of this. It's like asking a carpenter to build a table, giving them planks, and then not enough nails, and maybe just one hammer. But what about the saw?
Yeah.
So you don't have enough tools. So that's another elephant, providing the tools for IC people to do their job better.
I love that. And spot on in terms of what you're saying. I think a lot of it, from what I've seen as well, comes back to being able to, that line item that you mentioned, the ROI, the measurement, the analytics of what we're doing, because a lot of the decisions in business is related to what does it mean back to the business? How do we track it? How do we make sure that it's giving that? And off the record kind of question, it wasn't pre-planned, but how do you help communicators do that when there are so many channels and there are, it's a soft touch as well. It's a soft element of the KPI of how people feel and how they're engaged. What is some advice that you would give to people listening today going, yes, I agree. Yes, I want that line item. Where do they start?
Should I start with that one?
Yeah, go for it. All yours.
Well, sometimes we're our own worst enemy. So the fact that we need to tell our story in more business relevant language and get better at business data and metrics and link what we're doing to business outcomes, it's not new. It's something we've been talking about for a long time now. And I think particularly internal communicators are still uncomfortable with data and with how to measure and get those real business metrics. And I think it's reached a level of urgency now. If we don't do that, we're going to really struggle to prove our relevance. And, I think we need to think of ourselves as a core business function. And we might have got into communications because we're good writers or we like thinking creatively, but now it's about marrying that. So it's not, just about the data. You have to add its narrative plus data, which is it's where the real power is, in a language that resonates with business leaders, because they're under operational pressure often. If you talk to them in terms of employee engagement or soft skills or those kind of metrics, they're not necessarily landing. But what they're not saying is that it's those things that often lead to the business outcomes. If you don't have the trust, if your reputation suffers, if you're not looking after your employees, that is going to have a very significant impact on your bottom line. So it's speaking in a language that makes sense to your business.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Mala, anything to add to that? Because I think that Megan's spot on there.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, just if I give an example of a place that I worked in, I think it's very important to work with the line managers.
Yeah.
Because they are the closest to the people working on the ground, the people who are working either on the production side or closest to the customers. And they trust, they don't trust an email coming in. They trust their immediate bosses usually, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't trust their immediate boss, it would be someone senior, at least in the team, that they can go to, right? So I think for us, one of the, if it was me, which worked before with my team and myself, is we were working in a semiconductor manufacturing plant. We had on site, at that site, we had 10,000 headcount in 2 small plants together. And we were trying to run this thing called lean manufacturing. It's like a different version of Six Sigma, but not as intensive. So when we're trying to roll out lean manufacturing, one of the things that under lean is reduction of costs. A dollar saved is a dollar in the bank kind of conversation, right? So one of the things that we spent a lot on, besides gold wire, which is made out of pure gold, as the conductor, another one is mold. It's like a glue that after you do your assembly of the semiconductor chip, you need to cover it up. Now that mold, right, actually is very expensive, but there's also a lot of wastage. It's like a tube of glue. Once you open it, and if you don't use all of it, it will harden, and then you have to throw it away. So there was a lot of wastage. So we who sat at leadership team, or we who sat in senior management team, having our weekly meetings, looking at Excel spreadsheets, we understood the cost. But when we had to cascade that information down to the people on the operation floor, we had to translate it to a language that they understood. And that's when the senior operators, the senior technicians told us, what does that mean? And then we managed to convert it to, okay, power line A, power line B, power line C. Power line A, every month you throw, at that time, there was a new car that was out in the market in Malaysia. It was called a MyV. Okay, we are throwing in line A 100 cars. In line B,
wow.
the wastage of this is valued at, 53 cars. Now, if you can times that by a year and the value of each car, see how much we can save by just making sure that we're using this mold properly.
Wow.
Don't simply open the cans unnecessarily, But this is the kind of conversations that I see people can help translate. And also when they're talking to the big bosses, sometimes the big bosses only see spreadsheets. And they want to cut out a line item. They just cut out a line. They don't realize that the line item is actually people. So we, the middle, have to go, hello. Another example is I was working in oil and gas, and this was in a facility, warehousing facility, and we were looking to cut headcount, cost anywhere really. So there was one person at the leadership team who was just looking at the spreadsheet, goes, okay, I have decided we're going to cut line A, B, whatever. She just drew a red line across on the screen, right? And then we all looked at her, and then the operations manager whispered to me, and I was sitting there, and I was shaking my head because she didn't know what's happening on the ground. She sits at HQ. And the operation manager goes, fine, let her do it. Then he puts up his hand when she's asked any questions. He said, who's going to be driving the forklifts? And then she said, the people. Then she said, you just cut out the only 2 forklift drivers we have left.
Wow.
You come to the warehouse, you drive the forklift. And then
Yes.
the rest of us were trying really hard not to laugh, but we were clapping for him.
Well, it's very relevant. Yeah.
So this is the stuff that you need to make it relevancy to the audiences.
It's very relevant, particularly in 2025. We're seeing a lot more cuts, a lot more discrepancy spend being, and like what you were saying, Megan, around the comments from politicians undervaluing the work that's being put into people and managing people. There's a lot of ambiguity. I think people are being a lot more tolerant to ambiguity, maybe shifting gears a little bit around, Frank talked about this tolerance of ambiguity, and people are just used to having a lot of change and just a lot of gray areas in their life, particularly, when you think about the economy and then you come into work, more ambiguity. As communicators, we have to often communicate to our people, and I'm a communicator as a leader here at Staffbase to my people around this ambiguity and helping them feel secure and confident in where they work and feeling that sense of stability. Are you seeing that in the line of work that you're doing as leaders in communication, trying to help these people in the organization feel that sense of comfort and stability when there is so much ambiguity? How do you see that play out in the world? Do you see that there is an ambiguity tolerance around you and in your clients and in the workplaces?
I think it'd be nice to say I saw an ambiguity tolerance. I think, to be honest, many of us find it very hard. It's one of cycle is difficult to listen to sometimes. The amount of complexity and the volume of things that we're trying to navigate through is difficult. So it's, you know, I think that's where skills that communicators tend to more naturally have around being empathetic, trying to put ourselves in others' shoes, listening, understanding are really, really crucial in this kind of environment, looking after people's mental as well as, you know, physical well-being. And I think it's very difficult for managers and leaders to communicate these messages. I mean, if you are communicating structure or there's cost-cutting, job cuts, etc., they're not equipped. They don't feel confident to do that. And that's another role that we can help. And I think sometimes because it is difficult, then they won't at all. But the gap, the silence can often be very detrimental, or even more so, because that allows the rumour mill to take off and catastrophize things. But if we can be proactive if we think of ourselves as important in the risk management process and what's keeping boards up at night, even things like the walk back of DEI policies, particularly in the States, or tariffs, for example. Now, if you're working in a steel company or you're in a company that's walked back DEI policy, and many of them are global, international, then you should be thinking about, or us as communicators should be thinking about, what information do our employees need about this? They're going to be interviewing potential candidates. They might be answering questions from friends and family. Different departments might have to have policy interpreted and communicated clearly that has, you know, various serious implications. And if you don't manage that well, employees can feel unsafe, more exposed to bullying and harassment. Maybe their jobs are unsafe, and the rise of employee activism and cynicism is also something that we're seeing. And, you know, that can cause other issues. That can spark data breaches or, you know, spiral into a full-scale crisis. And the media communications people aren't looking at things from that perspective. So we constantly need to be scanning these now big external factors and thinking, what does this mean for our organisation and how can I help leadership navigate this?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And Malal, like, you know, Australia, we can be a little bit more direct in our comms and open to talk about things, we'd hope. Southeast Asia, Japan, I just recently came from Japan, very different in terms of just the openness of talking about things that are hard to talk about. Love to get your take. Does what Megan said, does that resonate with Southeast Asia? Is that a different mindset? How do we as communicators work differently in our different regions when we have cross-regional employees as well? That would be one that maybe, and Megan, feel free to answer that one too, but maybe I'll start with you, Mala.
Okay.
The big one.
It's very different. We don't speak so directly here. Okay. Yeah. In Asia generally, because we have these two things, cultural and hierarchy. Okay. So if the boss is speaking, we may or may not agree, but we won't say anything. It's the same with the media. The spokesperson can be in front announcing whatever quarterly earnings or whatever it is. The media will just listen, generally speaking, not ask that many questions unless it's a really hot counter, for example, on the stock market. But if it's not, they generally won't ask that many questions. So sometimes what we have to do as the comms people have to plant questions. We will find friendly parties, friendly media, or if it's in a town hall, we will find a friendly person so that when we say any questions from the floor, someone asks something instead of dead silence. Yeah. But we all know they have questions. It's just that hierarchy here, if the boss is talking, generally speaking, they won't ask. But no one. After the event, the media will ambush the guy, you know, when he's leaving the hall or when she's leaving the hall or when she's heading towards the dining room or something like that. They'll ambush. Town hall, same thing. When the boss gets off the stage or the bosses get off the stage, then some of the staff might go to them. Or they will ask their own managers later, right? So we have that. And the reason for it is not like we are so afraid of them. Some of us are, because some of the bosses can be very tough. You ask a question, they look bad, the boss will take action against you. But the second one is we also want to save the boss's face. or if there's someone who's older than us, right? We don't want to ask a question that could possibly put the other person in an uncomfortable position or a not so pleasant light. So that is really big in Asia, and it's very difficult for, I mean, we navigate, like, so when I deal with, some of my colleagues in Finland, for example, they are so direct,
very different.
right? And then when they come here, they're like, why isn't anybody talking? And I'm like, that's how it is.
I think we're not always open, Mala, and I think
Passively.
certainly in cost-cutting situations, or if people don't feel safe to speak up, you will certainly see the same thing. People are unwilling to, or we might facilitate or start off the discussion by having a question ready. That's one of the tougher ones, to get it rolling and say you have permission to ask the tough questions. But I think it's really interesting that when people do feel like maybe their job might be threatened if they speak up, and there is this tendency to not say anything and not cause trouble. And that's a real problem, because if people aren't speaking upwards, then mistakes or ethical issues may not be surfaced up to the right people, and where organisations can really become unstuck. So employee communicators playing that role of advocates for the employee voice, I think, becomes very important.
The second thing, though, that is true. But a second thing that I've noticed as well in this part, Megan, Ramak, is the quality of leadership.
Yes.
Because if when there's ambiguity, people are uncertain, they turn towards leadership. Yeah. Not just at the C level, but also all the way down to people who are line managers, department heads, and all of that, right? So the quality of leadership here that I'm referring to has to be one that is trusted and knows the business. So you can say, for example, I'll give you an example where I think
the key word there is trust, right?
I can come to a place where I completely messed up. I was head of department then. I was on the senior leadership team, right? Our CEO got removed suddenly. Of course, there was build up towards that, but when he was removed, it was very sudden, right? He was asked to go out of the office to a particular location, and I already had word that he wasn't going to come back in again, right? But I couldn't tell him. So I'm just losing my mind, okay? And I'm collecting the rest of the C-suite quietly and said, everybody, could we please get into the boardroom, right? We need to plan the next thing, right? And they didn't want to do a plan B. All right, at that time when I was bringing it up prior, they didn't want to do it because no one dared say the CEO could possibly leave. But I said, if he left, we should have a backup plan, a plan B. So now the CEO has left the office. We don't have a plan B. I'm scurrying to put the crowd together for a plan B, right? I've never prayed so hard in my life. So, but it all went completely pot, because when we were trying, I was saying that, why don't we do it this way? We can just tell people this is all we know right now, which is a standard 101, right, for issues and crisis. This is what we know right now, but it's still operations as usual. We still need to keep the business running, right? So please focus on what you can handle while we figure out this part. We'll come back to you, we promise, by whatever date or time, or whatever it is. But please don't say anything to anybody. If anybody asks anything, could you please channel it to a few of us, right? So it was what we thought was just to hold it, just hold it. I know
hold it.
Yeah, just a holding statement thing, right? But when the word went out and we said, okay, you go back to this is the C-suite, that you can contact, it all went to pot also because the other C-suite started being pulled in for investigations by the local authorities.
Oh, wow. This is like a whole other webinar, Mala.
So this is what I mean. But, because we had a plan B, we said we're going to roll it out and this is who you should contact. But the people on the ground and our stakeholders externally, because of whatever happened, we had lost trust. So you may have a great plan, but if your leadership is not reputable, they're not trustworthy and they're not capable, and that reputation is there, it's hard to come back.
A lot of work to do. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you want to handle ambiguity, sorry, Ramak, but if you want to handle ambiguity here, you need to put people that are trusted to be able to speak. It may not necessarily be the C-suite.
Yeah, I love that. I love that point. And we talked about this. We've had a couple of sessions, but the line managers, having trusted people that can be that spokesperson is critical. We haven't gotten to a lot of areas that I want to delve into, maybe a couple of more before we have to wrap up, unfortunately. One area I do want to talk about is AI. It's, we talked a lot about it in 2024. This year is about, and I know, Megan, this is particularly a passion of yours around AI and comms and how we use it. Frank talked about potentially AI, impacting our cognitive behaviors and our cognitive ability to analyze and develop. How do you see that? Do you see that being a risk to us as communicators, as leaders in this space in 2025? Do you see different point of view on that? Love to get your take and of course Malar as well on the use of AI, particularly as we look at using it quite a lot in 2025.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting. I've been reading a bit about, is AI making us dumber? And I think people do fear that. We've got information so quickly, such powerful technology at our fingertips now. I think that there is two sides to this coin. Sure, if you choose to use it as something that you generate content from and cut and paste it, and you are being lazy in your use of it, sure, you can do that, but it's a tool, and like anything, it's about how you use it. I think also a lot of the things that I spend time on, I think, is time wasted. And I would love AI to handle the cognitive load of some of those tasks to, free me up to be more strategic and more creative. So I think there's definitely pros and cons to it. I think AI can help us free us up from some of the more tactical tasks that I think some of our stakeholders think we should be able to do as fast as AI does for us, like, producing content or, a video or something like that. I think they don't always appreciate the time that goes into it. So you can spend a lot of time on the tactics when you really need to focus on the planning, the analytics, the understanding your audience, the coming up with the strategic plan is more where the rigor, I think, and strategic critical thinking is required. And AI is very, very good at that and getting better. It's now, AI is reasoning. AI is watching something the other day that was, there's AI that helps you humanize AI content. Now.
I love
yes.
that.
And AI may need to go into therapy because of the data that it's being trained on in terms of counselling and relationship there. So the AI becomes stressed, actually.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's a huge topic, but I think we always worry that we'll lose something when we introduce new technology. I think we said the same thing about the internet and Google. It's just another thing we have to adapt to. And we have an offline world as well as an online world where we can apply our critical thinking.
I love that. I can't wait to go deeper into that. And I'm going to look up that AI that's got some emotions. That's awesome. Malar, how about yourself? Anything to add there in terms of what you're seeing with AI?
Yes, I agree with Megan, but over here in Southeast Asia, generally speaking, we play with, it's very high touch here in this part of the world. Okay, the personal relationships are very important. Meeting face to face is very important, right? Having a cup of tea. Most of the discussions are either on a golf course somewhere, over a game that we're playing somewhere, over a cup of tea or coffee or a brew of your choice. Those are where things get sorted, right? So that we are high touch, but we like high tech. But high tech is to help high touch. Yeah. So the AI conversations that we have, we are aware of it. A lot of us play with it on our own, but we are slow adopters in the sense that we want to wait and see, because when we bring any new software into a company, we have to start talking to IT, procurement, a whole bunch of departments. And then there's this aspect now of cybersecurity as well. And, information leaking out. As it is, we have information leaking out, with God. Now you put it in the system, it goes out even faster, or it gets misabused. All right.
Yeah.
Disinformation is another one whole headache that we are having. But here, I think AI is here to stay, but only if we can, over in this part, we're looking at it only if it can help the work better, make our jobs better, faster, easier.
Yes.
But for the cognitive part, I think it's still very important. I love AI, and I always tell my teammates, please play, please use as much as you can. However, before you send anything out, could you please do the high touch, which is discuss it with somebody or discuss it in the team and look at it as, okay, who is the target audience that we want to send this out to? Do we understand that group's needs, that what's in it for them? So whatever AI churns out will never understand the nuances of that stakeholder or stakeholder groups that we do, right?
That's right.
So I think as long as we keep having the conversations and not just depend 100% on whatever content is generated, we're all right.
Yeah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. That's some really great advice. As we go into 2025, I would love to wrap it up by asking you one last question. If you had a magic glass looking forward, what would be one advice that you would give to communicators listening here today? In what area, like one area of advice or one area of focus? Maybe I'll kick off with Mala. Any advice you'd give for our communicators listening here today?
I would say two things actually. One, understand your business inside out. Really know your industry, know where your company sits in industry, the trends moving forward, everything and anything about your business. Because only with that, when you speak, when you translate whatever messages, you're able to link it better. And so this will make you not just an order taker any longer. Right? You can push back. Why, for example, if boss A asks you to do this, go like, why are you asking me to do that? Because from what I've learned or what we have researched, this is happening. How will this help that? You can push back. It makes you a stronger business partner. Two, I think for this is something that I've learned over the years, learn how to be a better facilitator and coach. Learn how to ask questions and not give the answers so quickly, particularly to line leaders or managers, because we can't do everything ourselves. We're not on the lines, we're not in the front line sometimes. So we don't really know exactly what's happening. So we have to get the feedback, we have to get information in, and then we have to utilize them to be our extended arms and legs. So if we can be better facilitators and coaches, then have them be able to share more safely, feel more safe sharing with us and teaching them how to also do that with the people that they deal with. That's what I think.
I love that. I love that. That's great advice. And Megan?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mala on her first point around learning the business, absolutely fundamental. And I think we as communicators are becoming more T-shaped. So sort of broadening our skills so we can talk risk, we can talk operations, we can talk technology, we can talk engagement. So it's that broadening of skill as well as a deep area of expertise. Might be ESG, it might be, whatever. But I think learning to be able to speak in the language of the business so that you can be more proactive, you'll be invited in, and stop talking about communication outcomes. The leaders don't care about engagement statistics. And my second thing is telling our story better. I think we undersell ourselves. We're used to making other people look good, organizations look good. We need to be our own PR machine and, doing it in a way that lands for our stakeholders.
That is incredible. I could not agree with you more. I think the theme is know the business, speak business talk, and bring it back to your value. If I had to sum it up, you guys have really done an amazing job in helping to shape the conversation. These are the unspoken truths. These are the truths that no one wants to talk about, or that, it's too hard and we don't want to approach them. So I cannot thank you both enough. I could literally spend hours and hours talking to you both. You are one of my favorite people in the world. So thank you both for your generosity of time. I I value both so much. We'll definitely share both Malar and Megan's details in our email to everyone as well. So please reach out, connect with them. They're definitely part of our comms unity. And if they can help you in any way, shape, or form, I'm sure they will, as just being great communicators that they are, and also as part of their businesses as well. So Malar, Megan, thank you again for all of your time and your experience. I'm sure we'll see you back again soon. You're invited back anytime. What an incredible session. First and foremost, huge thank you to Frank Wolf for sharing his insights and challenging us to think differently. I know the time zones don't necessarily work for Asia Pacific and Japan with Frank, so massive thanks to Frank for being part of this session. And also a heartfelt appreciation to our wonderful panelists, Megan and Malar, for their generosity of time and sharing their experiences, their patience with our technology as we navigated through it all. And, you know, the work that both of you do every day is just so inspiring. And I cannot thank you both enough for your generosity of time, of being on our panel and sharing your experiences with the many hundreds that have joined. And of course, lastly, huge thanks to every single one of you for joining and engaging with us for this first webinar of the year. We'll have plenty more for you to be part of, and I just cannot thank you enough. If you've loved today's discussion, there's going to be more. So I'd love to invite you to our upcoming sessions. Please follow us on LinkedIn. There's a LinkedIn APAC Staffbase page. Follow there. There's all the events, a lot of the information that we've talked about today, we're going to be posting there, a lot of insights, best practices, really a good space for you all to chat with each other and to connect and get to know each other as well. We're hosting our Comms Clubs live sessions back this year. So first one will be in Singapore on the 16th of April. Cannot wait to see all of our Singaporean friends over there. And then Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane will be following. So please register your spot. We do have limited spots this year. It does go very fast. So excited to have our friends Gallup joining us for these sessions to really showcase some of the 2025 workplace engagement reports. It's going to be launched as well in April. So it is one definitely not to miss. So with that, I hope that you all have an amazing, amazing day ahead. Please keep the conversations going. Please keep pushing boundaries, talk about hard things. And if there is a way that myself or my Asia Pacific and Japan or global team can support you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.